Hey, so there's a lot of people out there who will tell you that communication is the most important skill in a relationship. And while communication is very, very important, it's vital, I'm going to say that there is another skill, a different skill that is much more important. Hi, I'm Fran Gallagher. I am your guide to relationships, meditation, and intuition. And as I always point out, these three areas of our spiritual life, and I include relationships as spiritual because the ideal relationship takes us to a more spiritual place, a place of love and oneness. So these three areas all require that we have the ability to self soothe. Meditation is an act of self soothing. And intuition requires a lot of relaxed and calm focus. And that only comes when we have done a good job of taking care of ourselves outside of the time that we're focusing our intuition. Relationships require self soothing because otherwise we can become codependent with the other person. Another way to say this is that we expect the relaxation that we feel when we are with the other person, especially at the beginning of a relationship when it feels so nice to be with the other person and presumably be in love. We expect that relaxed state that we get from being with the other person, we expect it to be there all the time. And therefore, we expect them to be available all the time. And of course, in this day and age, that's not possible. And when we are available to one another all the time, that's actually unhealthy and it's called enmeshment. I remember being in a department store a long time ago, and a woman came marching in, obviously angry. She was holding a man's suit out in front of her as if it were evidence of some horrible crime. And then the man was walking meekly beside her. She stalked up to the desk where an employee was behind a cash register, and she declared in a loud voice, "This suit doesn't fit us." That's enmeshment. So, unless they literally wore that suit together, which I don't know how they could have, and it would look very odd, it wasn't a question of whether the suit fitted us, fitted both of them. And the woman was speaking on behalf of the man. And there was something rather scolding about the whole thing, as if maybe the suit, the employee, and the man were all wrong. So this is so unhealthy, but you've seen it, I've seen it. What if there is a new way of being where we benefit from our connection to the other person, but there is a bit of space between us? And the only way, again, that can happen is if we have the ability to self soothe. Self soothe is that when we get upset, we can take care of ourselves. Especially since sometimes when we get upset, we're upset with the person we're in relationship with. You've heard of the timeout. You may have heard of it in terms of children and parenting, or you may have heard of it here or somewhere else when it is spoken of as a skill in relationships. So let me go over what the timeout is. The timeout is for either person when emotions get high, when one or both people get triggered, for one person to recognize that emotions are starting to get high, and that person to declare the timeout. And all they have to do is say timeout or make the common hand signal of a T. That's all they have to do because the two people will have discussed ahead of time what the timeout is, how it works, what it means, how long it lasts. So that conversation that you have ahead of time is where you explain that the timeout is for both of you to stop talking right then. Nobody can throw any kind of remarks at the other person as they walk away. That's being passive aggressive. Nobody gets to stomp or slam a door. All action stops right then, and both people move on, presumably to some kind of a behavior that is self-soothing, that comforts them, that lets them ratchet down their nervous system and stop being so triggered. So you can see then, if someone cannot self-soothe, they can't abide by the timeout. They will be ratcheting up their nervous system. They'll be getting more and more upset. So, of course, there's a little cheating involved sometimes with self-soothing, because sometimes we may need to call our therapist, call our best friend, call someone who we have lined up to receive those kinds of calls, where we can go over the he said, she said conversation that triggered us in the first place, or the action that triggered us in the first place. That's why in my Trust Your Gut program, I have a cohort where everyone is required to meet with one another throughout the program, so that they have someone they can run by their intuitive insights or their upsets, so they can learn how to defend against their self attacking superego, that judge within, that critical self. In any case, we can then, when we declare the timeout, we can then turn to a friend, a book, going for a walk, gardening, a video game, something that we enjoy in order to calm down. We might also meditate. We might do some breathing to release some of that pent-up energy. The other thing about the timeout is that it cannot resemble the cold shoulder or freezing out, or I can't think of what it's called, but when we ignore someone and we refuse to acknowledge them. This is very damaging to a relationship. And any of us who are prime candidates for being damaged by this behavior, we must have experienced it in childhood for it to be so difficult now. So the way that it will remain healthy is that you have a plan ahead of time. We'll meet within 24 hours to resume the conversation in a calmer way and settle it in a calm, respectful way. Not when tempers are running high or energy, emotional energy is high, at its highest sometimes. We have to be very, very careful that we're respectful with this. And again, we meet within 24 hours. This is the rule for an intimate relationship. Now, for a friendship or a business relationship, we may allow more time before we meet again. And it may not be formal if it's in a business setting, for instance. We might have to say, I'm going to have to think about this, and then walk away. We might not be able to declare a timeout in a business situation, for instance. So to self-soothe means that we have the ability to regulate our own nervous system. We have skills in order to provide calming self-care for ourselves. This is so important. And it allows us to be flexible in our relationships, to not depend overmuch on any one person. And it allows us to respect our significant other, because again, we're doing this so that we don't use harsh words or harsh actions in a situation, or come too quickly to decide on an action that could be very hurtful. So I hope this was helpful to you, and stay safe in all things that you do. Bye for now.